Brilliant, Jeordie. It is a pleasure to sit down with you today because I've been a fan of Tonic Rider. I've obviously engaged with what you do before now a bunch of times, and obviously we've talked digitally for a long, long time now. And it is a pleasure to be sat in front of you and your magnificent hair today to talk about the work because I do want to do a little bit to promote it and really promote the work that you do. I think it's fantastic. So, really, there is a lot about out there about Tonic Rider. You know, people can access it. People can access the services, festivals, online, things like that. But what is your own personal connection with the charity? How did you get into the role, and really, what connected you to it? What brought you to the dance, so to speak? Brought you to Tonic Rider.
Thank you, Dom. So I joined Tonic Rider 2.5 years ago, so March 2021, at the very launch of the program. And I met Steph Langan, who is the CEO of Tonic Music for Mental Health, so the broader charity that Tonic Rider is part of, through my PhD. So I'm currently working on a PhD in substance use amongst working musicians. And I was really impressed by the work Tonic did. At the time, it was more around music workshops for people to aid their recovery, so more general public, more music fan based. But I did notice there was a lot of work they did with musicians. So I reached out to Steph, and Steph invited to meet me. Tonic Rider, the aim of Tonic Rider is promoting good mental health in the music industry. It resonates with me because we know there's a prevalence of mental health issues in the music industry. Some suggest it's at crisis level. I think that's a little bit debatable whether it's really at crisis level, and I think it's more there's concerns and there's more that can be done within the music industry as an infrastructure and in day-to-day workings. And yeah, I was just fully impressed by the work around peer support groups, so online peer support groups facilitated by Adam Firecek, and also as well the training element of mental health first aid and suicide first aid light.
Absolutely, and I've been on the suicide first aid course and in the peer support groups, and they are a fantastic resource. I think it's amazing, again, that people have come together to build something like this. I want to ask you about sort of the day-to-day and your job and what you do. What is a typical day? And I know this is a dangerous question to ask someone in creative work and in the music industry and the arts. What is a typical day for you, and what are some of the things that you find really rewarding about your work at Tonic Rider?
Typical day for Tonic Riders, it's so varied. That's the nature of charity work, that's the nature of mental health, and the nature of the music industry. But we're really privileged at Tonic Rider in terms of the diversity of what we work in. So in terms of Tonic Rider, we've got the core program, so the online program. So day to day, that's sort of the registrations of the program, and then also one-to-one appointments that we have with participants prior to attending the program. We then also have our resources, so we're constantly working on our mental health scenes and our blogs and the digital Tonic Rider box that we're developing, and then also the events as well. So we've just got back from festival season where we're offering backstage mental health support at Nibley Festival, at Victoria's Festival, and also Mucky Weekender. We did that across the summer, and then we're looking to do more festivals next year. So it's really a mix of kind of core work of doing the program elements, then do more outreach stuff, doing events. We attend a lot of panels, take part in a lot of podcasts. We do quite a bit of media work as well to talk about mental health in the music industry, because we have a team of mental health professionals from the music industry, including, as I mentioned, Adam Firecek, who runs the peer support groups. So, we feel we've got a voice and we feel we've got expertise in mental health in the music industry as well. So every day is a different day. It's a highly rewarding job as well. I'm very proud of what we've achieved at Tonic Rider and continue to do, and the plans we've got forthcoming, because it is rewarding to support the mental health of musicians and music industry professionals. For me personally, it's tied into the fact that being a humongous music fan, I always wondered why some of the musicians who benefit my mental health, particularly as a teenager, were maybe experiencing poor mental health themselves, and at the worst end of that, consequence-wise, it led to suicides or overdoses, for example. So to be able to work on a program with a fantastic team where we're actually addressing that issue it's like the dream job for me. It's the most rewarding element you could ever ask for.
Good, good. I mean, again, it really does, resonate with a lot of people. We talked a little bit in the beginning of this about your connection to it, but in terms of your background, in terms of, again, you've got your PhD, you've got this real interest and passion for music and for mental health, and obviously for positive change. And I certainly wouldn't want to make any assumptions and say that just happened to you when you got to Tonic Rider. So before you had this job, before you had this opportunity to do that change, what is it that really, again, prompted your intrigue in mental health, in the music industry, in the arts, to not only to have this job but also to have a PhD, which is of course a lifestyle choice in itself, Jeordie?
Yeah, I mean, the PhD is still ongoing. I mean, I don't think do PhDs ever end? I mean, that is I swear when you talk to, it's like they never end. But it's getting there, and with the support of the Tonic team as well, which is great. But yeah, I kind of feel I entered this work kind of through the back door. And I mentioned that to someone the other week, and they said that actually it's not necessarily about the back door. In fact, I believe that was Jake from Sunline, or Jake McAllister mentioned that. I started my work literally as a bachelor's dissertation as a music fan, having to come up with a topic for a dissertation from a psychology and sociology degree, and went home, saw the news that Scott Whelan from Stone Temple Pilots had passed away, suspected drug overdose. And it led me to wonder why, that specific question, why do a number of musicians seem to die young? So I thought that'd be a good topic to research in terms of risk-taking behaviors. And that led into more mental health element, which then for me has gone down like a substance use path. And then just prior to joining Tonic, I contributed as a research assistant to some publications. I've also contributed as an author to publications, mostly just posting on social media about mental health in the music industry and taking part in any activities. And I guess that's really helped my role at Tonic Rider, because one of the things we're doing as well, so soon to be properly announced, we are doing some research from the Tonic Rider team. So that's in partnership with the University of Portsmouth, led by myself and Adam Vychek, around mental health in the music industry. And so that's been a really fantastic way for me to tie in my sort of academic work, and then also sort of the more applied day-to-day work that I do at Tonic Rider, and bring that together. And again, another kind of also string to our bow in terms of the voice we have in terms of mental health in the music industry.
Yeah, fantastic. So again, you mentioned the string to the bow, extra arm to the grand and growing, Tonic Rider legacy for sure. I'm very excited to see what happens as you guys progress in the future. Would it be right for me to say that you're interested then, Jeordie, in people, in the psychology of people? You mentioned coming from that background. Do you have a passion for not necessarily people's mental health, but certainly people and the way people think? Would that be accurate on assessment? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think anyone who works in mental health, there is a passion for that kind of psychology, socially, the passion for why people experience poor mental health. So that can be from a behavioral element, that can be from a more of a social consequence element, there can be a biological element to that as well, and understanding why this occurs, and then using that information to work out how can we support people, what can we do in a holistic way. So with Tonic Rider, the work we do is around sort of courses, groups, workshops. We do offer elements of one-to-one support as well, with psychotherapy and counselling to a lesser extent, and finding the right solution to every participant that comes through Tonic Rider. Sometimes we're not actually the right charity or right organization, but we do make referrals, we do signposting. So I naturally think that is the case. So for me, that is certainly the case in terms of that interest. My particular interest is mainly around substance use. So that kind of, why do people engage in behaviors that at times can be risky and problematic, but not always. I think, substance use and mental health are kind of neighbors, but not always, because, there are elements of substance use which may be sort of not necessarily safe, but safer. So general alcohol use, people having a drink on the weekends, doesn't really lead to risky, problematic behaviour. So that's where my interest ties in, and that resonates well with the Tonic Rider team. So we've got different interests in different areas. So we've got Adam, who's particularly interested in peer support, particularly interested as well in neurodiversity, as well as another neighbour of mental health, ADHD, for example. My colleague Jade, who also runs some of our peer support groups and does our training courses, has a particular interest around music performance anxiety. So what causes that? How can that be addressed? So that's another strength to our team as well, is that we each have sort of different areas of interest that are quite linked strongly to the music industry and musicians in particular.
Yeah. Again, a very diverse kind of range of services that you guys provide, and hopefully, we can shed a little bit more light on those. A few more questions then for you, Jeordie. It is well documented the positive stuff that Tonic Rider do in terms of going out to festivals and the connection that you can have with people. You mentioned, giving the mental health support to people backstage at festivals. I'd like to ask you, what can you give me, obviously, confidentiality aside and things like that, can you give me an experience where, because again, some musicians would love to have that kind of thing backstage at festival, but how does that work? Does someone come straight off stage and talk to someone at Tonic Rider? What are some of the good memories and good examples you can share of that type of work, which is very, festivals, very lively, very noisy, very intense for musicians, for fans alike? So what is that process like for you, and also, someone who might be looking for support in a festival setting?
The amazing thing is the conversations vary across festivals, across the different people we speak to. There's always something new. What's amazing, so the work we've done this year have been more awareness stand based. So having a stand backstage with our zines, so our free mental health zines there, having conversations with artists, with crew, with personnel working at the event, milling around backstage. And like I said, the conversations, they can resonate from artists talking about supporting a colleague and how can they learn, what training courses can they do, what zines can they provide, to then in terms of artists and crew talking about support for themselves and finding more out of the program. I think what we offer is kind of sort of a beacon backstage where everyone can come over, they can find out more information about the program, have a informal conversation about mental health. We do have mental health professionals in the team who are present should that be needed. And there's some really, really fantastic memories. I mean, you may have seen on social media, particularly at Mucky Weekender, there were a number of artists who took photos with our Tonic Rider box and really highlighting the work we do there. And there's some great conversations as well, because I think what's wonderful about the music industry, and actually my colleague Adam talks about this a lot in terms of his own work, about the positive mental health effects of playing music and also working in music. It's not just all negative. There's many positives. There's positives to playing music. There's positives to playing, doing a show, writing a song, working at an event. The real buzz you get that, this has been successful. This has been really great. So it's about that as well. A lot of the conversations are about good mental health, positive mental health, learning, sort of from artists about, what helps their mental health. So that's been really great as well, because we have to remember that. And that's why I mentioned about it. It's not necessarily a crisis, because as an organization, as a charity, if it was an absolute crisis in the music industry, you would think we would discourage people working in such an industry. If it was a case of you enter this industry and you come out and your mental health is completely ruined. We just know there's pitfalls. So it's about sort of really pulling out the good mental health aspects of working in the music industry and challenging the barriers that can lead to poor mental health.
Wonderful. And it's nice to hear that the music industry is not in a mental health crisis. And I think a lot of people do, make those assumptions and those points. And from your standpoint on the, effectively on the front lines where you're talking, to musicians and artists, it's lovely to hear a more positive opinion and thought on it, because again we hear a lot of doom and gloom, and understandably so. Like I say, there's a lot of difficulties and challenges that artists face, but it's lovely to hear from your perspective that we're not at crisis point, Jeordie.
I think the particular crisis points are in a way kind of the more industry elements. So for example, the closure of grassroots music venues. So music venue trusts are highlighted. I think it was 172 venues in the last year. So that's that crisis point in terms of grassroots venues. No grassroots venues, no areas for musicians to play their first gigs, their upcoming gigs. Culture is damaged, and we're finding it as well with nighttime economy as well, with the work that NTIA do. Also as well, another crisis point is around streaming. So the poor income that comes from streaming, particularly Ivor's Academy have raised that. A lot of work that Tom Gray has done as well around sort of broken record campaign, definite crisis point. And then finally as well, more of a political thing, but the effects of leaving the European Union that's had on touring. So the Carry On Touring campaign have really highlighted that, not just in terms of artists in the UK touring outside the UK, but also artists come to the UK to perform as well. So these are kind of 3 examples of crises that then lead to poor mental health. And I think we need to maybe do some more work around that, where, as well as highlighting the good mental health aspects, the crises that are not specifically directly associated with mental health all have an impact upon mental health in the music industry. So the more we can sort of pair those up, raise awareness around that, I think that'd be great as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Certainly, again, the venues thing. It's a very interesting point, Jeordie. Again, there are certain parts that are at crisis point, and again, the more that we can do to help independent venues, the better. On that sort of theme, I would like to, again, because I'm aware that there's a lot of positive stuff out there about what Tonic Rider do. Could you shine a light on some of the challenges that you guys face? Obviously, you mentioned before we started recording the wonderful fact that Tonic Rider has had so much support from so many people, in the early days, and people have really got behind it, which is fantastic. What are some of the biggest challenges that you all face as a charity, in spreading the message and kind of the day-to-day running, for example, of Tonic Rider?
I think any mental health charity, and specifically in the music industry, the biggest challenge tends to be stigma of mental health, stigma of poor mental health. And we all have mental health. So we use the term mental health, instantly thinking negative, but we all have mental health. It can be good, it can be poor. That's our biggest challenge. So in terms of do enough people in the music industry know about us? I think we're getting to a point where we're really spreading the word, which has been fantastic. People are aware of the work we do. Then it's about that foot in the door. So with the registration process, musicians, music professionals coming in, completing that registration form, that's a big challenge. Once that's submitted, that's one foot in the door to receiving support, attending training. But we know at that point, there's a lot of people who do drop out, that, they can't complete that form. They're not ready. They're worried about stigma. They're worried about the taboo, worried about maybe exposing themselves as well in terms of their mental health. And then again, you'll find it with the next step of registration. So we offer a one-to-one appointment to everyone prior to the program. Again, we find there's dropout there. That's a big step to then, join that Zoom call, click that Zoom link. We get people drop out at that point. And then also at the end, when a participant's booked on to an element of the program, that attending of the program. So the next stage of, actually joining that course group and workshop. So we know that there's kind of steps, there's these different levels where there's dropout. And, as a charity, we're all about mental health action. So we've done years of mental health awareness. We're about mental health action. So, we're finding ways, how can we address this dropout? How can we support the participants who at each stage drop out of that process? How do you support potential participants who want to register, but they're finding it difficult? So going into 2024, we're looking at more ways to be able to reach areas in the music industry that are more difficult to reach because of that stigma. And as we provide all our peer support groups are online, our mental health first aid, suicide first aid is online, the weekly drop-in groups online. I think it's highly accessible. There's always going to be a percentage of people who don't use technology, don't use the internet, don't have access, can't use Zoom. There's always going to be a small percentage, but I think one of the absolute strengths of the Tonic Rider program is because it's delivered online, it's accessible geographically to anyone in the music industry. So it's not London centric, it's not based in a city. If there are music professionals who live at the very south, say the Isle of Wight, or at the very north, the sort of the Highlands of Scotland, they can register, they can participate and actually meet like-minded peers in the music industry who live in different parts of the UK, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I've seen the benefit of that myself in terms of being part of the peer groups for sure. I'm a big advocate, Geordie, for that everybody can make a real change themselves. I think a lot of people, look at conversations like ours perhaps and go, well, how can I, like Tonic Rider, how can I, inspire change? One person can't do that. One conversation can't do that. But I personally think, and this is obviously my opinion, that it starts with a conversation like this, and then somebody else might see or hear this or whatever, and then they might, build on that and take it to their community. So I do feel personally that everybody can inspire change, for mental health, for the music industry. I don't know where you sit with that, because, I know there is more work to be done on creating mental health provisions for the music industry. We talked about, doing that in sports entertainment, in wrestling off record as well, so there is more work to be done. But do you believe it can start with one person, or do you believe it has to be, a much bigger, sort of organization like Tonic Rider, or can anybody, make a difference in their community, when it comes to the music industry and mental health?
It's a ripple effect, isn't it? So it's often talking about the ripple effect of a death by suicide, that it affects up to 150 people as a ripple effect. So, friends in the wider community. So reversing that, talking about mental health is a ripple effect. When one person highlights mental health, when the two of us are talking about mental health, is a ripple effect. People listen, people then get inspired. It then opens the conversation more. And I think in terms, again, mental health in the music industry, when I first started working around this field, 7 years ago, there was very few organizations, very few therapists, there's very few people really talking about the topic in a healthy way. It was more romanticizing or demonizing mental health in the music industry. We've really swapped from that, and which is great. And we're really starting to see a change. And I think with Tonic Rider, we're there, like I said, for mental health action. We're continuing that. It's also as well the awareness element of that. Holding conversations, taking part panels, podcasts, having those conversations, the informal conversations. And I think one of the areas people in the music industry who maybe think I'd like to make a difference, instantly, one of the things I'd always encourage is the training courses we offer. So the mental health first aid, suicide first aid light, everyone who attends on courses are from the music industry. That equips people with the skills to identify and support someone experiencing a mental health problem. In the suicide first aid light, around suicide prevention, again, the ripple effect from that is really strong, because then it means that artists, crew, personnel who go on tour or work at a venue or work in a recording studio or in their day-to-day life can use those skills to support someone at the point of crisis. Yeah. And that's a real strong point. So I think instantly that's the first thing I'd always recommend is Tonic Rider program is not just for musicians and music professionals to support themselves. There is, the peer support group, the drop-in group, but the training element is to support your colleagues, the wider music industry, and also the general public. And I'd advocate anyone to register and go onto those courses and do any form, any form of training, sort of get more literature on mental health. We can all learn more about mental health. Personally, for me, I think mental health should be on the curriculum. But that's another story for another time. But I do think, as people, we should be educated more around mental health and neurodiversity as well, linked to that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and I think that's, from a Tonic Rider standpoint, that's the first protocol. Also, as well, checking out our website, we have our mental health scenes. Again, they're not just useful for people to read them, to aid themselves, but they're useful for music professionals to read, to then support their colleagues in the wider music industry from what they've learned from those scenes.
Absolutely, and we'll make sure that those links are where we put these conversations. So I'm excited for other people to access Tonic Rider as well in the future. Jeordie, we've got to the point of the interview where I check whether I've done my job properly. Obviously, you mentioned there are things that you have coming up to promote when we were talking before, like the Never Mind the Stigma and things like that. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to finish us off. Is there anything that I've missed today that you'd like to plug before we finish up?
No, there's nothing you particularly miss, but just, as to promote the work we do, just, as to promote the work we do, tonicmusic.co.uk, you'll find information about the Tonic Rider program for the music industry, the Never Mind the Stigma program, which is for music fans around suicide prevention. And on both those areas, there's information about each program, there's access to the mental health scenes that each program provides, information about our events, and then you can also learn more about us on our socials as well. So Tonic Music MH. And just engage with what we have to offer. Be great.
Fantastic. And like I say, just before we finish up, I've engaged with those services. I can absolutely, advocate for them. It's great to connect with other people. And obviously it's lovely to connect with you, Jeordie. We've had some lovely conversations over email, and you've been very supportive about the work that we do. So I appreciate you and the wider Tonic Rider network.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Dom.